welcome to Taking It to the Streets. I'm your host, Andy Goldman from sunny St. Pete, Florida. This is the show where we take it to the streets, knowing if we don't, the streets will take it to us. Welcome to Taking It to the Streets. It's Andy Goldman, of course, with Rich Beemer Beem. The week after what was an incredible U.S. Open. We will get to it shortly. This show, of course, brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, www.wrightwoodmedical.com. That is www.wrightwoodmedical.com, 773-848-7100, your leader in refurbished ultrasound. On we go. The plot thickens. Rich will give his side in a moment. I just don't think you're going to see something as awe-inspiring, amazing. If you're a golf fan, you got to see it on Sunday. You really got to see the game as the game should be represented. You got to see the wind, the rain. It almost felt like a Grateful Dead song. It was all parts of nature being represented in this awakening of sorts. I hate to be dramatic, but I'm going to turn over to Rich. Rich, am I wording it correctly? I still have the goosebumps of what I saw on Sunday. I absolutely loved it.
It was great.
But it was. I don't know the way to put it. Where do you fall?
No, you kind of said it absolutely perfect. Like a Grateful Dead song. I never heard that. I'm actually going to tell my buddy that because he's a Grateful Dead guy. It was one of those scenarios that just played out like it was like something spectacular that just kept unraveling, at a very slow motion, whether it's, something negative or something positive, but everything just was seemingly just slow motion, unraveling piece by piece, shot by shot, good and bad. And at the end, you probably had one of the greatest finishes to U.S. Open. I mean, Tiger Woods is probably going to always be there, number one. But listen, this one did not disappoint. It didn't disappoint because somebody finally decided to take the U.S. Open by the scruff of the neck and bring it home. And, I've known JJ for a few years now. And, when I first met him was back in 2022. We're playing in a hit and giggle, a pro scratch event. And so we got done playing and I go, JJ, you haven't won on tour yet? He goes, no. That's very strange. So that can't be. And I said, you got all the tools, everything I saw just in one round of golf proved to me that this guy's unreal. And so he went out and won in 22 at the Boulder, Texas Open, which was no shock to me. I think it surprised him a little bit. And then, he's kind of going up and down a little bit about where he wanted to go with his game, even last summer. He gutted it out and then just kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to change my attitude. That's exactly what he did. And to him go out there and to perform like he did under the most intense pressure on the world's hardest golf course, I was just so happy to be a part of it. So happy to be a part of it.
I want to get it through a couple of questions I have for you. First off, let's get to the elephant in the room, which is the ruling that didn't go Sam Burns' way for the temporary water. You take it from there. Is that the right call? Was that a hideous call? Is there a corollary that the guys that are watching this that are football fans could maybe understand that it was the call that wasn't made? Is that basically the corollary would be the non-pass interference call that should have been called, that wasn't called, that really does affect the outcome of the game?
Yeah, or something, as trivial as an offsides call, and something. It's really weird because it's
there was temporary water, correct, Rich? I mean, there was
well, of course there was, and here's the thing about it too, is that I called up a good friend of mine who is a rules official, not with PGA Tour, but PGA of America. I've known him for years, and he's been the rules official for all the big tournaments, whether it's the Ryder Cup, PGA Championship, the Masters, things like that. And I asked him, I said, something doesn't pass the smell test here. And he goes, Beemer, I'm telling you, the guys at the USGA, because he even got a second ruling. He says they were standing right there, they were on it. And what I came up with is I said, but I'm going to pose this question to you. Say he was a left-hander and his ball was out in the fairway, but he was standing on that position, standing where his ball was, right?
You get relief.
Because he would get relief. That's exactly right. Now, listen, if we've seen the videos on social media, what it looked like right underneath, somebody went over there and squish, you can see water bubbling up everywhere. But the ruling is, though, they could not see water visibly on the surface. So in one context, they got it right. They absolutely got it right because they could not visibly see any water. But here's the problem with it is casual water doesn't necessarily need to be seen. Like I could walk down the middle of the fairway and not see casual water, but as soon as I take a stance and the water bubbles up, guess what? I have casual water. So it's not like it needs to be seen for a stance. Obviously, it doesn't need to be seen from a stance when you put your feet on it. But you're putting 175 pounds of weight. If you're doing me, and Sam Burns probably, man, he's lean, so he's probably 175 pounds as well. But you're gonna put, water was gonna be drawn up from there. And that's my point I took from this. And it doesn't seem like it's the same ruling for everybody in that instance. And I was really disappointed in the fact that, they, meaning the USGA, they couldn't or wouldn't or didn't. I mean, they followed the rule of the law to perfection. There's no doubt so they got that right. But you almost get the feeling, though, that common sense, it's been just pouring down rain and he's tapping his club and you can see water splashing everywhere when he does it. You would just think that, yeah, there's water underneath the surface. If he would have been able to stand anywhere near his ball, they would have seen that as well. But
isn't it? But Beemer, I'm hearing you talk about it, and it's making me think: isn't it onerous on sand to sell it a little bit? And since practice swings are legal, doesn't he need to take 20 practice swings until show the guy in the red hat? There's temporary water here. Look.
Well, and he called in for a second opinion, which is usually the second guy comes in. Whatever he says, that's gospel. That's the rule. Yeah, he probably could have sold it a little bit better, Andy. I just don't know what else he could have done because it didn't, because when you ask for a second ruling, more often than not, you're not going to get what you're looking for. I mean, you're trying to sell something hard as it is, and it's probably not going to work out for you. But I would have thought that if he would have sold it, like if he just said, listen, if I'm a lefty and if I'm standing here, if my ball's out in the fairway like this, if I'm standing here, you're going to give me relief, correct? I guess he could have done it that direction, the way that I'm thinking. But listen, he's in the heat of battle. He's not going to be thinking about that at that moment in time. There's just no way.
The guy that could have won this tournament for me was Jon Rahm. Saw him miss a lot of 9-foot putts. Saw him run a big one on Sunday. Here's something that's one of my things with golf is Rahm, as well as Rory, a handful of others that played well on Sunday, specifically played in night and day situation to the guys that played in the afternoon round. The morning round was a lollipop compared to the wake of the flood, which was the second. Not only are those guys playing for contention, potentially to win the thing, but they're playing in brutal conditions along with an hour and a half rain delay. Did Rahm play well enough to win this thing? On my eyes, it looked like he did.
Well, at the end of the week, no, he didn't. I mean, whatever he shot earlier in the week, I know that he struggled. I think it was the first day, if I remember correctly. And JJ, I don't want to say essentially won it on Thursday, but a bogey free on Thursday, that's going to get it done 8 days a week. And
how about hanging in there like he did on Sunday?
Oh, I know. It was crazy. It started off with 5 straight fives. And that's actually brings up to another point. I'll finish yours first, though. But, Rahm, the weather conditions, that's just the rub of the green. That's just the way it goes. Because it happens a lot where you get good breaks and you get bad breaks. You get good draws, you get bad draws. that's just the way it goes. And it's happened many a time at the Open Championship. You know, the year that Tiger was trying to go for the career Grand Slam, he went out there in the morning. He just made the cut. He went out there first thing in the morning, and it was blowing 50, raining sideways. I think he shot 81. And then about an hour and a half, 2 hours after he finishes, all went away, and the weather was perfect. So you can't, I mean, Mother Nature, you can't blame anybody on that. You know, that's just how it goes. But here's an interesting question. And I was thinking about Oakmont and how challenging it is and how hard it is and so on and so forth. It's hard for everybody. It played fair and we got the great winner. But this is where I think it gets interesting. How many players can start off with 5 straight fives on Sunday when they're in contention and then go on to win? Well, the answer is 0. And shooting 40 on the front 9, 0. He's the first one to ever do it. I'm just trying to think, you know, gosh, is that what we want? And again, the story is great, but is that what kind of golf course we want to see these guys playing on for the national championship? And again, I love JJ, and I'm over the moon that he won. I'm just thinking the golf course, you know, when somebody goes out and does that, they either A, shows you how difficult the golf course is, or if he started off poorly. But I think the golf course, I don't think it helps the look of Oakmont, I guess is what I'm saying. Because, you know, to go out there and shoot, you know, to make 5 straight fives and still win. I mean, the golf course is playing so hard, everybody else fell apart. We studied the ship and played from there, I think 2 under par, which was incredible. But that's the weird part about it to me is that, you know, that golf course, it takes no prisoners. And I don't know. I just, something about that.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I think I understand where you're going with that question. The golf course was the conqueror. The players were the conquered.
Yeah.
And the USGA, as well as the US Open, is meant to be the championship for the player, not the golf course. And like the golf course was crowned as the champ, not
that's exactly
player.
Right.
And that's a very tough question because I liked it. That's my first answer that comes to the top of my head. I like having to watch the greatest players on earth subjected to the pain and misery of the 25 handicap. I really do. I'm in that sadistic.
Well, that's fine. No, listen, you're not in the, you know, there's a lot of folks that have the same outlook as you do. So yeah, that's fine.
But I enjoy seeing guys struggle to get out of a big bunker, and just as a 25 handicap will do. But I totally understand what you're saying. This is about the U.S. Open really having a player come out and shoot a 40 on the front 9, still get away with the victory, is a little bit of an indictment about how tough the course was.
Yeah,
that just shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and again, for him to go out and win it, you know, while everybody else was going around, and part of it was the conditions too. You know, I think that Sam Burns is probably kicking himself more than anybody after making birdie at the 10th hole and kind of steadying the ship a little bit. And then he just took the wrong club off the 11th hole. He took a 3-wood because that's what he'd been hitting all week, instead of taking like Adam Scott did, taking a driver, you know, and he got penalized for that. It hit in the slope and came back down. He just made a collection of errors, Sam Burns did, you know, because he didn't drive it very good. And so I think that I know that the golf course is extremely difficult, but, you know, to have it so penalizing time after time after time, you know, that's why at one point in time, I think there was like 5 guys that had a chance to win it on the back 9. I think there's either 4 or 5 guys that were tied at -1 that had a chance to win it. And like going, holy cow, how did we get here?
Yeah.
When did this happen?
Yeah.
You know, and so it was just, it was made for great theater, I gotta say. It really did. But I just, you know, golly, I understand that I want to see guys struggle and have pain. That was a little much for me, I think. You know, that was a little much.
And I can't blame you. I could see it both ways. I could see it both ways. Beemer, I was watching, and I keep watching this Ben Griffin kid keep coming and coming and coming. And
oh, yeah.
I get to finally have that respect that I think deserves. I mean, this kid, shades, wearing those sunglasses out there, looking like he's Rico Suave. I mean, I like
Their church. Yeah.
I don't think
Their
he's
church
aggressive line.
No, I do too. And I tell you what, the guy's a stick. And, I think that it's funny because there's a lot of players that it'll take us time to get to know. Like, even my wife says, who are these guys? And I said, well, they're new. It's like a changing of the guard a little bit. Tiger and Phil, obviously, Phil's gone to live. Tiger's battling injuries and whatnot. But, a lot of the guys that I played with, they're gone, 50 years older and gone. And we're just kind of having a little reset in the game. And we've got a host of guys that are in their early 20s, mid 20s, and even late 20s. I think Ben Griffin is one of them. But I mean, he quit the game, was doing something else.
Like real estate.
Yeah, like real estate, I think. And all of a sudden, he gets back into the game and he gets a resurgence. And I love stories like that because that's kind of what I did. But I mean, he was out of it and
Nate Lashley had the same thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a lot of guys that do that. And I think it's great seeing these guys. I think it's great seeing these guys come out and play well and get their names down.
I think
he is for real. Yeah. Oh, I agree. There's no doubt he's for real. He won the Colonial. He won Colonial a couple weeks ago in great fashion. He went out there and took it to everybody.
Won the Zurich with Novak, I believe.
Won the Zurich with Novak. Yep, that's exactly right. Held off, and then takes Scotty Scheffler.
Rory and Lowry, I want to say it.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. So, takes those guys, and I just think that there's a lot of good young players that we don't know about yet, but they got all kinds of game. I remember watching Ben Griffin hit it. Couple tee shots at the PGA, and I was shocked. I had never kind of stood behind him and seen him hit golf balls. And I'm like, holy cow, this guy, it makes a different sound.
Yeah,
and he is strong. He is a hell of a talent. He'll be on the Ryder Cup team, I believe, this fall. And we're gonna have 4 or 5 different names, I think, in the Ryder Cup this fall. And that's just because these guys came out here to play. They won't finish in the top 6, maybe 1 or 2 of them, but they'll be close enough where I think that they've got to be picked.
A golfer's character never ceases to amaze me and impress me. Now it's Cameron Young's the guy I'm thinking about now. For him to play in golf's longest day on Monday to get into the U.S. Open in that 5-man playoff, whatever. I saw it. He made the birdie. He goes on. He runs a great race at the U.S. Open. Finishes, I believe, top 15 all day.
I think so too. I totally forgot.
Yeah, I mean
Beem, he had a great tournament.
Yes, he did.
His career's not over yet.
No, it's not by a long shot. He just needs to. He really just needs to get a win, and he is so good. Of course, my iPhone's freezing up. I was going to see what he was. So I just think that he's. I kind of know what's holding him back is that he gets a little frustrated, a little angry with himself, a little too quick. Instead of being patient just a little bit more. I've seen it, and if it's not going well, he sometimes doesn't fight it out. And listen, everybody does that. I'm not picking on anybody, stretch. But, I've heard because this guy's got way too much talent to not have won on the PGA Tour. I mean, he really has got an abundance of talent, and it won't be long. I think that his game is finally kind of coming back a little bit. I think he got a little frustrated there, and when you get frustrated, it seeps into your scores.
Yeah, he has a pissed off and angry gait to his walk and then his look on the boat.
Oh yeah,
I don't think it's a good look either because it's the old song, Don't Cry Out Loud. He has a little bit of a cry out loud to him. Just as I told you, Brian Harman has a bit of sadness to him. Those are guys that just look something to me. I don't know if that.
Yeah. He had a really rough run there. I'm just looking at his stats, and all of a sudden, starting with the Truist, 47th PGA, but then 25th Memorial, then tie 4th the last 2. So he tied for 4th this last weekend.
Those are great tournaments he's running.
Those are great. Absolutely. No, he's playing extremely well. Again, he he should be more of a household name, but I think he's on the right track. Um, he's I'd be a little surprised if he doesn't win this year, but it's got to happen sooner or later for him. I really kind of think it's gone too long without him getting a win.
This episode of Taking It to the Streets is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, the leader in used and refurbished medical equipment. Wrightwood specializes in ultrasound equipment, but can also be your vendor of choice when sourcing lower cost alternatives for your operating room suites, scanning the entire medical spectrum. From single physician offices to larger hospitals, Wrightwood is the lower cost solution for your everyday medical equipment needs, and all of Wrightwood's equipment comes with warranty. You can reach Wrightwood directly at www.wrightwoodmedical.com. That is with a W, WRIGHTWOOD medical, or 773-848-7100. Again, 773-848-7100. If it's used medical equipment, it's Wrightwood Medical.
Do you know anything about this new guy, Brian Rolapp, that's going to take over as commissioner for Monahan?
I don't, to be fair. He just came over for the NFL, right? I
Right.
just heard about this today. I read that he was coming over last week, but with everything going on the U.S. Open, I didn't have a chance. And it sounds to me like Monahan is going to kind of take a back seat a little bit and be just a board member or chair of the board.
Correct.
And then at the end of 26, he'll turn the reins over. Is that
That's what I understand. Right.
That's what I understand. Yeah, that's what I heard today too. To be fair, everything kind of seemingly came out of left field for me, but I don't know him. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what's going on at the PGA Tour. I was a little surprised to see Monahan kind of going and leaving, but it doesn't completely shock me.
Do the players like Monahan, Rich? I mean, obviously there's got to be a contentious thing because of the live issue, but well,
Of course. I think that, I think all the players respect him. Probably doesn't. You're not going to get 156 guys any given week to like the same person. So let's throw that one out there for. I think that I don't think that people necessarily dislike Monahan. Like Tim Finchem was the commissioner of the PGA Tour when I was there, and I didn't necessarily dislike Tim. I think whenever I was frustrated with the process the tour takes, how the tour does business. And the first person you always think of is your commissioner. And so, I think that as a person, people like Monahan. I think he's engaging. He's super nice. He's charismatic. He's a good dude. But I think that, a lot of players will get frustrated with the policies and how the PGA Tour does business, and how they react to certain things. I thought that Jay did a really good job when it came to COVID and getting the guys back out there and doing everything like that. And then with Liv, I think he struggled a little bit, which is, I'm not too sure anybody could have handled the way that Liv did. And again, hindsight's always 2020, but
what could he have done? What could he have done?
Not that I'm privy to all the conversations inside, but I don't think that anybody could have really handled Liv and what it was doing without having a 5-year plan in place, working on things here and there, because I know some of the rumblings, I know some of the way that the PGA Tour works, not all of it, but it sounds to me like with these elevated signature events, the PGA Tour was footing the bill, not getting it from sponsorships. I think they're going back into their funds, their reserve funds, and having to subsidize the cost of the purses. I don't know if that's a good way of doing business or not. I'm not too sure how many sponsors you're going to get at, I think we have 8 of them at, $20 million per purse. So that's always going to be an issue. When I think a normal one is 8 million, and then all of a sudden you're asking for an extra 12. I think there's some that have done business with the tour for a very long time that would probably pony up a little bit more money. But in the same breath, like, what is the PGA Tour? What are you going to get back for that added value or that added number in sponsorship when you got, John Deere paying $8 million and you got the Travelers this week paying 20? Where's the extra $12 million value in it when it comes to that? But again, I still think the PGA Tour is subsidized a little bit, but going back to your question, but I just don't know if any commissioner would have done well going with live. I mean, there's so many ideas. It was almost like you had to react to see who was going and who was staying. Because listen, you're not going to keep, a guy like Dustin Johnson, for example, from going, when he's got 2 majors under his belt, already made an abundance of money, but the Saudis offer him, 9 figures. Who in their right mind wouldn't do that? Right. And DJ was, late or mid 30s, when that number came about. And it's like, I don't blame him at all for taking the guaranteed money. So, without the knowledge of who wants to go and this and that, you're trying to keep 48 guys essentially from leaving your tour. And, you're not going to be able to convince 48 guys to stay when there's a lot of money being waved at them.
It's for a different show, but I have no problem with them leaving to go to the live. And you could have been,
I never have. Yeah.
you could have been JFK, FDR, whoever you want. This problem that you and I are talking about was that huge and that insurmountable.
Yeah.
These guys leaving and the Saudis bankrolling it. This was this is a little bigger than Jay Monahan.
Absolutely. And they're trying to create this new product and this and that. Yeah. It's interesting to say the least,
But Beemer, for the record, they have 4 guys. There's a little bit of a weird narrative about the live that they're end of lifers and they're just hanging on. I'm just giving you an exception. 4. That's a false narrative. 4. They have 4 guys in the top 18 at the U.S. Open. They did well at the Masters. They're not end of lifers, and the 4.
No.
And the 4 of the 18 that did well at the U.S. Open were not named Joaquin Niemann. They were not named Bryson DeChambeau. So that is a big time quality league.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So with that said, let's move on to the Travelers. Do you have time to give us a 3-pack?
I'm going to give you a 3-pack.
All right. Beemer's been so hot while he's looking. He gave us Sam Burns last week, which was incredible. It's a great call. He gave us Harris English, who did get to the weekend normally and didn't have a good weekend, but still it was impossible. Go, folks, look at who didn't get to the weekend, and you'll see it was a big deal. So he got 2 to the weekend, and he had Tom Hoagie, who was right on the cut line and didn't get to the weekend. He gave a chat about how this guy is a grinder, and he did grind, and it was just not enough. He did exactly what he said. He was 1 stroke off.
Yeah, I was a little bummed out for him because I know that he played pretty darn good. But again, Oakmont it's so hard to pick guys at Oakmont because there's a disaster waiting on every hole, right? So yeah, and I'm actually going to pick 3 guys this week that I haven't, and you're going to be shocked at one of them. You're probably be shocked at least 2 of them. But I'm kind of looking at it as one guy is fresh, didn't make it to the U.S. Open last week. The other 2 did, and I don't think that both of them made the cut. I know that one of them did. Maybe they both did. Anyways, but I'm kind of looking at them because I think that they're moving the right direction. I think that they're so I'm going to keep away from some of the bigger names to kind of put some interest out there at maybe a lesser, somebody that you wouldn't think about. I got Daniel Berger. I think this guy coming off of injury, I think he's an amazing player. I think that this golf course will suit him to a T. He can make a lot of birdies in a hurry. These greens are going to be perfect. And you got to kind of hit some different shots, some cuts, some draws, and things like that. I think that's why Scotty Scheffler found this so much to his liking last year, because he's not afraid to hit both draws and fades. I've got Ricky Fowler. I think Ricky Fowler is starting to look really good again. And I know he's a sponsor's invite this week, and he had a week off, which I know probably didn't sit too well with him. And I would imagine he put in some pretty decent work last week and is now fully ready to go. And this is the one, this guy's won here before, been a while. I got Jordan Spieth. I know. And I'm picking Jordan because what a better place than to pick up another win that you haven't had in a few years. Again, coming off of last week, the greens are so all over the place. He putted okay. I think that he needs to get one or two to go in. And what a better place than this week where he was, in this place where he's won before. He's had some pretty darn good successes around here. That's the guys that I like. I mean, there's an abundance of guys that I think would also do very well out here, but I'm going to pick those three just because I just like them. I think they're all going to have a good week.
All right, I'll give you my three. These are going to be, boy, I just struggled at the U.S. Open. I was 0-2-1. My pride and joy was a push with Detry and Nick Taylor. So that about says it all. So take with a grain of salt. I'm going to start with JT Poston, -20 over Brian Harmon. I've always been a JT fan. This is about the time of year that he gets going. If you have him, if you trend and believe in that kind of thing, this is about the time where we get close to when he gets rolling. So he's a weird horse. He gets going right before the John Deere, right before the British Open. So JT Poston. I also circled Ricky Fowler, Beemer. I did. I liked him over Max Grazerman. So he's -20. That was one of mine. And a guy that I've gotten burned on this show so many times with, when are you going to show up, Joe Highsmith? I'll give you one more try. Between he and Akshay Bhatia, they have
Akshay Bhatia got me
eggs on my head. It is not.
They've not treated you well. They've not treated you very well.
So Joe Highsmith -25 over Brian Campbell, the kid from, not a kid, he's a grown man from University of Illinois.
Yeah.
And we'll give it a whirl, Beemer.
I love it.
Until we meet again next week, buddy.
Goodbye from St. Pete. And remember, folks, you're only as good as your last trade. So never too high, never too low. Till we meet again.